Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. As many of you have followed our program over the years, you've certainly had your fill of what we'd like to call natural healing talks. That's how we're trying to find innovative ways we can reach out into the community and find some of those modalities out there that are non-invasive, that seem to be relatively new, but perhaps have great results. Whether you're trying to heal yourself emotionally, physically, whatever it may be, you might want to discover something known as matrix energetics. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is someone who spent years in front of the camera and on stage as a model and trained others to do the same. Then she spent years behind the camera working on makeup on models, personalities, and movie stars, luminaries, and regular people around the globe. She's always been exploring energy and how we as individuals use it in the form of money, power, physical strength, and ability, and spirit of the heart. We're going to be finding out how we can talk about these subtle energies and how they may be keeping us or helping us to explore the ways we can truly and spiritually express ourselves with this wonderful life we have. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Janet Barrett. Janet, how are you today?
Oh, gosh, what a great opening. I'm wonderful. Thank you, Daniel. I'm so pleased to be able to join you and your listeners.
Well, I figured you'd been introduced on stage and in front of camera for years, and I couldn't let somebody down and get your subtle energy down in the basement where we have to find a way in the next 30 minutes or so to raise that again, where the vibration is so incredible it just brings enthusiastic responses from our listeners out there.
Oh, that's great. I'm here for you, babe. Okay.
All right, so let's talk about subtle energies. What are we really talking about here?
Well, I think in my terminology, subtle energies are what you can't see but are real. And we are all very aware that if you look at your hand and you look at your other hand, they seem real. And we're talking about the space in between, which is as real. There is information to be found on all levels, and if you're in a metaphysical bent sort of way, you're aware that you can hear things and feel things and see things, but they're seemingly not real. And so it's those unseen energies that we all encompass, everything from your gut feeling to just different ways to pay attention and out there, and it's all of us. It is this collective energy evolve in and around, and how we're all part of it. So, it's not what we think. Man is so busy occupied with what his thinking is, and we're much more about heart-oriented.
And it's true, too, because there's been certainly a lot of scientific research that supports the fact that the heart is a tremendous energy center. And if we could get out of our heads and into our hearts a lot more often, we would probably see more what we would consider to be miracles being manifested, wouldn't we?
Totally. So what you're talking about is the quantum physics, quantum mechanics way of engaging science as opposed to just straight physics. Science has really stepped up as our technologies have increased. We hear now about the vibrational medicine. We hear about resonance. We hear about looking at the electromagnetic fields in different ways. And what we're really talking about in the field of the heart that you're particularly mentioning is that they're concentric circles going around a core, and that field is like 5,000 times stronger than your mind. So it's engaging thought from this state, from this place. It gives us access to what we call a unified field, unified consciousness, zero-point field, all kinds of terminologies, but it's basically that it's not coming from your thinking in your head and brain so much as it is from the heart access. It's just a different way of engaging information. Very powerful, gives us a lot more potential. It engages the state of potential in how we want to make changes in our lives.
You bring up, I think, something that all of our listeners should be really paying attention to, and that's the word potential. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know how it was for you growing up going to grade school, but I think a lot of us can identify with this one.
Well, yeah, it was how we weren't filling our potential. Right?
Exactly. That's exactly the direction I wanted to go. And the reason is, I mean, how many times you're doing what you feel is the best kind of work, especially when you're in grade school. You're just basically there doing what the teacher tells you to do. And I feel sometimes that education, at least at that level, was sometimes our worst enemy for the rest of our lives.
I can totally concur with that. I think in my experience of the world and working with clients and in my own personal story, we're educating ourselves how not to be emotional. Our basic thing about humans is feeling physically and feeling emotionally. We don't get any training for that except what you get in your family life, how to deal with things. And the other thing is that it's so important is to be able to develop and support curiosity and the ability to question. And then you get these labels of, well, you're not reaching your potential. And the truth is you're not challenging me to reach my potential. You're not supporting me in reaching my potential. And potential is something that becomes this thing to beat yourself up with, and then you go into resistance about it. Well, you're right, and we all know how people can be with something being told to them, and then they have to react. And so we're in a state of reaction and not responding, which are two different. So, yeah, I totally get you there. And this is how to take it to what it truly is. Potential is the place where change happens. Potential is the place where it's no thing yet. Energy is where it is something already. We have a label when we call something energy. Potential is where it's formless. That's what potential is. There's no definition there. So we've kind of been using the word poorly often, like the hit over the head like you're describing. In our terminology, we're repurposing that to understand that that's the place because where it is truly potential. So you have a thought and you have another thought. But in between the thoughts was the space. And the space is like the two hands I was talking to you about. It's where stuff is that's no thing yet. That's the potential of how you make change and embrace and make.
And it is fascinating, too, when you realize as we go back to the potential and the teachers sitting there in the parent-teacher conference, well, your son or your daughter is very bright. They show potential, but I don't think they're living up to their potential. And you wish now you could go back to that little child and turn to the teacher and say, well, do you believe that you've reached your highest potential?
Well, and that's not far off from the way I engage information anymore. People come to me, clients come to me, and they've got what they perceive as an issue. And it's up to me to say, whoa, well, let's go back to where it wasn't an issue, which means we're going back to before it became the thing of an issue. And what if that could be different? And we engage that state from within the heart field, and change happens. And so this is something that you can go back and go, okay, you can see how patterns got set up at that point, and you can go back and say, well, look at what I did. Okay, I don't have to fit into your belief system, because what happens is a state effect got set up at that time, and we all agreed, oh, Johnny's not doing well. He's not living up to his potential, and in hindsight, you can see where that was the moment where that life started to take place, that in a pattern that's still playing out now. We can. Daniel, I invite you. We'll go find that place for you and go. Let's see what could be different.
Now, how do people usually approach you when they want to, I guess, seek healing or change or whatever it is they come to approach you about?
How do they find me?
No, I guess my question is how do they find the healing, or, what is it about what you do they decided, I'm coming to you? I mean, for instance, we'll go to the potential thing. I didn't live up to my potential, so I've had a series of careers or low-end jobs just because I was told, or I've come to the belief that I'm not worthy for anything better.
Got it.
Now, they could go to a Dr. Phil. You know, in fact, he thought he would offer his services to Robin Williams, and, you know, God bless all that. But the fact is that they finally say, well, there's a traditional way to approach this that maybe just isn't working, and then they decide on someone like you who, you know, consider yourself an energetic healer, you know, and I think people are coming to understand what that is, but it's kind of a step into an unknown void for a lot of people that are used to the old way or the regular way of doing things.
Right. So what we do is how you live your life is is your rule set. It's your belief set. It's how your perceptual bias of your experience show up. Yeah, we are self-fulfilling prophecies always. It's what you believe in is what dictates your experiences. And there are places where you can change that. There are places, so when you can realize that every moment is an opportunity for change and making a new choice. But that's a mindset, that's a reality set that you have to engage. So when people come to me, what I'm holding is that I'm in a neutral place about how you're showing up and how you're connected emotionally, physically to your story. Because really, your experiences are your story. They're your myth, and it's all self-generating. And so, you know, I mean, and you can go from the place of, well, you say genetically this is a pattern. Yes, but there's a lot of places where genetically it didn't connect because it didn't have those stressors just quite. So there are people that don't have something in your family. So we're looking at what is on a energy level, free of the labels, of where a pattern has gotten created. You can change those patterns, and that's what we do. So we drop into a state of heart and unified consciousness. That's the place that I'm going to hold for you, where information is freely showing up. And it's very right brain. And for people who are not familiar with that kind of terminology, right brain is your creative side, your pictures. It's the global version of the world. Left side is structure. It's what you build on. So you take information from the right side. The left side says, yes, let's build that. And it creates form and structure. And then you go back and forth between the two if you're lucky. The challenge is that structure gets put in there without a lot of variables. It's not necessarily known to be for flexibility of thought. And it all of a sudden is stuck hard and rigid. Yes, on Tuesday at 3 o'clock I always do this. You know, and the habitual responses start to show up because the physicalness of those patterns is starting to lock in. And we just engage from a different set of reality. So most people are very much hard, you know, the chair is the chair. I'm engaging in the reality where that chair and you are both energy and motion, your photons, your information, and resonance patterns. And when I engage your information in that way, in that reality, you can experience shift in your physical reality. So it's fun.
You know, and I can believe that, too, over the many years having talked with many people of disciplines from around the world. And one of the things that's really fascinating about something like this is the reality of our beliefs, as you were talking about, and how the more we put, let's just call it for now heart, unless you've got a better term, heart into the belief of that reality, the more the reality becomes real. It's like you're feeding it energy, and as you were mentioning earlier in the program, the heart has astounding amounts of energy that it emits. And what's fascinating also, though, is that you take a look at cellular memory, and that's a way that we store our experiences that are even beyond the memory. So, like, for instance, you may have had a situation you've engaged with somebody like, say, road rage 3 years ago, and you can still feel that in your body because your cells remember the electrical impulses flowing through and all that. Kind of explain a little bit more about why that is, and is it changeable?
Well, memory happens on all kinds of levels. It can be a physical, it can be a mental, it can be a psychological. And psychological is really interesting because that's where we think and feel at the same time about something. That's the land of fear and phobias. Mm-hmm. And so you can be, and you have short-term memory, and then you have that long-term memory. You're calling upon the long-term memory. And I'm not a scientist, that's not my realm of expertise in any way, shape, or form. So you can take everything I say with a grain of sand, and I'm okay with that. And it doesn't matter because change will happen if it's going to happen.
Well, that's a fact. Change will happen whether you want it to or not. And the people who get upset most about change are the ones that, waited for change to happen rather than making it happen.
That's right. And that's their control mechanism. And we're looking for a fluid sense of control. So, consciousness and so what might come up is me noticing information, and I use the word notice because then I'm just observing it in some way, and I'm not involved in it. I'm just allowing information to show up. I'm not attached. That's our problem, is we're attached to things. And so we're talking about memory here. You don't always remember what you remember, but it is there still. So it slips beneath the conscious, everyday memory of how you got to brush your teeth and go to work and the things you do, etc. And this is memory that is placed elsewhere. And it can be, but the body knows, and it is all being tracked on some level. You can't be aware of that because you got to get to work tomorrow. So, you got to devote your attention to the short term. But the long term is in there. And you're operating, we are so dynamic. We are working on so many different levels at any one moment. We are actually just a placeholder in consciousness. We haven't really introduced that word into this conversation. This is all about consciousness. And so if you reframe, which is what I'm doing, I reframe your stories and what you think is real, what you thought was real, and into a place of, well, let's look at it from a different viewpoint, then we can start to see how memory can play with us. Memory is not always, memory is totally influenced by what was going on in any one particular moment. You can have a car accident and 10 witnesses, and it's up to the detective to figure out which one's the right viewpoint, because he understands that what you ate that day, who you talked to, what the last 65 years of your life are going to totally dictate between what you think you saw and what you did see. So everything is getting colored through those perceptual biases. Mm-hmm. So, you have a lot of thinking, remembering, and we don't always remember right. And then we have things that we remember, and they're steadfast and hard, and then you start to allow that to shift because you realize it's really not that important. You realize that there were other factors at play, and all of a sudden you find yourself, well, I don't really remember it that way. And that's not necessarily a sign of Alzheimer or dementia. Mm-hmm. What it is you're allowing your sense of reality to have some flux in it, which in my work is a good place to be because I understand how people get trapped, and we haven't used the word limited, but we limit ourselves, and it's like that potential, the use of the word potential. That limited us in that experience for the rest of our life based on something somebody said that just sunk really deep into an emotional, physical response, got buried under all this experience and other memories, and is still operating. So we're fascinating creatures, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. And bringing up the idea of, let's say, the car crash you were mentioning earlier, I was just thinking of crime, for instance. Mm-hmm. And there was a really interesting book I read some years ago, and I just can't remember the name of it right now, but what the author was talking about is how we remember. And the fact is that we don't really remember things in details quite the way, as you were saying, that we think we do.
Right.
And he went into great detail as to why that is, and part of it, of course, is you talk about your experiences, then you engage in, let's say, this car crash you were mentioning. You might have had a trauma for a car crash, so what you may be recalling are the memories of what you actually experienced onto this one.
Right. So it happens all the time because we're creatures of association. We're creatures of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is in relationship to something else. And that can get, because at a certain point, the mind doesn't care. It just goes, oh, that's like this. And it makes that assumption. And then all of a sudden you're engaged in the other memory because the mind can't tell a difference after a while. You know, there's a place where it just goes, oh, that's just like this. And it's all the same thing. So
you know, and if I just have to interject because this thought right here is just something that I find really amazing and how we remember how we engage in a situation. I was downtown and I was at the library and I just happened to be sitting outside. I was waiting for my wife to come out. And I was hearing a conversation between, I guess, a black man, probably about in his early 20s, I'm guessing, and a white guy who probably was maybe about the same age. And I got to watch this whole thing go to its head, so to speak. And what it was is that the white guy was claiming that the bike that the black guy had was his. You know, that he knew that was his bike. And he says, well, I don't know anything about that. All I know is I bought this bike for $400 from this guy, blah, blah, blah. So he had ownership of the bike, and this guy, other guy, Guy B we'll call him, was claiming it was his. So you can hear the argument, and the guy was pushing it, Guy B, you know, the one who was claiming it was his bike. And it got to a point, he says, well, you know, how about if I just go ahead and take it? And, you know, of course, the other guy says, well, you can try. And sure enough, the guy was able to jump on the bike and he started to take off. Now, honestly, there was a moment in me that I kind of sided with Guy B. I just call it maybe, you know, a bias for whatever reason, okay? And the fact is, the other guy caught up to him because he was able to grab a hold of his backpack, and there ensued a little bit of a brawl, so to speak. Guy was getting his bike back, and Guy was the guy that had the bike in the first place. But what was funny was all the onlookers who were trying to protect Guy B. It was clearly almost a racial profile, but nobody's seen how the whole thing started except for myself. I was like, this is kind of ridiculous, you know, but I could just see it unfolding in front of me because most of the onlookers were Caucasian. And so you think about how is it that we really remember, can we recall accurately events when you can throw even something like a race bias in a situation, you know, things like that.
That's all inherent information. We do carry that. We do carry, especially in my work, I run up against that all the time with people, or I don't run up against it, I find it in people, is that they carry cultural biases, societal biases, very real, and they may be very unaware of them, but you and I and everyone is being affected in any one moment by influences you don't have a clue about. And I think that's often what surprises people when they get into a situation and they find them reacting a certain way, and they later on go, I have no idea why I did that.
Right.
You know, that made no sense to me. That's not who I am. But what it's probably tapping into and accessing is some memory in some realm that you're connected to. And I tend to look at people as sources of information. So you have all kinds of information in your field of awareness that you're unaware of, and that you resonate in that you don't have a clue about. So, you know, it's kind of, it can be the deja vu feeling where you've been where you think you've been somewhere or you've been in this situation or something like that, where it might not have been a current memory, but it can be an ancestral memory. That's quite common. So I think there's lots of different ways that we have been experience information, but we've been using old terminology to describe it, and when you turn to it, the conversation to consciousness, you really open up how you're experiencing the world. We tend, we're very label-oriented. That's very left brain of us, because if we know what it is, then we know what to deal with it, we know what to think. And that's part of our survive mechanism, sympathetic, parasympathetic system, fight, flight, or freeze. And so that brain is wired to make choices. It has to discern first, is this a threat, or is this something I react to, or is this something I ignore? And then you start to make distinctions, and you get to a point where you make judgment. And when you get to judgment place, then that's where the habitual stuff starts to set up. So, we're being influenced by things all the time.
Especially this day and age, and I was going to ask you, how do you see the evolution of technology, especially to the state we are today, how much that really influences not only our health, but the decisions we make about what we want, what we desire, the direction we want to move. And you just see it. It's crazy. I was just watching a documentary recently called Generation Like, and it's all about the phenomenon of Facebook and YouTube and how, young kids are getting on there and they're making pretty good money, to be liked and so forth and so on. But, how this is all coming together and bringing out, these ways that you almost feel like they've, I don't know, for lack of a better word, have kind of created people that believe they're being creative, but at the same time they're being servants.
Okay, that's all right. And I think that is the challenge of where we find ourselves in consciousness. In my world, there's no right or wrong. There's both. And neither one is a difference. It's just a different experience. So I'm holding a different mindset. I look at what comes out in our celebration of celebrities and personalities and the world and being in a global marketplace, and that there really are no secrets anymore. And it's not that things have to be secretive. It's just that things are known now. Everybody can watch you have an experience somewhere, and you're not aware that anyone is watching you having your experience. So it sets up a real different kind of resonance and state effect. And state being that something happens and we think, oh, okay, that's the event and that's it. Well, it's not. It sets up a state effect of where there's energy rippling out that has made a marker in consciousness, placeholder. And all of a sudden, this is now rippling out, and it's going to hit into something else. And then, if you watch a pool of water and you drop something in it and you see the ripples, and you see how it interacts with the other ripples that are coming from different directions, and now all of a sudden you have a different field effect going on. That's happening in us all the time. So we have what's called morphic fields, which are these unconscious and consciously held belief systems that have nothing to do with you, but they're the collective energy of consciousness. So it can be a statement like, let's see, bananas are yellow or whatever, and everybody goes, yeah, bananas are yellow. And then, sometimes bananas are black and yellow. And sometimes bananas are a lot of other things. And, there's this whole thing that gets set up, and all of a sudden it's on everyone's lips, right? Oh, bananas are yellow. Have you heard that? And it creates this dynamic about it, whether you believe that or not, or whether you've ever seen a banana, because there might be some place in the world that they don't have bananas, right? And so all of a sudden now you're in this ripple effect. You don't even know what it is, but you're in it. And I think that's, a very different place in consciousness than where we are because of our ability to create technology. So I think is probably in my realm of viewing the world, everything that's going on in the body. There are places in our bodies, in our day-to-day lives, where information is happening and the body can't recognize it where it is. And I think that's kind of the way this works, because I think everything is very core-oriented. We're being affected, we think, by things outside of us, but it's really our inside that's not clear. So, it's just rippling out, and now we're getting the information. We have. This is the most exciting time to be alive, to be honest with you. Because why not?
Mm-hmm. Right.
How do you want to frame your experience? Do you want this to be in a negative frame, and then we know what that looks like, or do we want it to be, wow, oh, isn't that interesting? Wow, what would I like to do about that instead? And we engage our experience, we take our control back, because we are so oriented that things outside of us are more powerful, realizing or forgetting that we gave them our power. We're allowing them to represent us in the world, because that's what consciousness is about. We are the collective. We're individuals having interconnected experiences. It's just a different way to engage.
And it certainly is a way to take a look at duality and realize, well, you and I are not separate from each other.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're both human, and on the level of energy that we're engaging, we're photons, we're light. We're photons, we're biophotons, which have a certain amount of to them. We are patterns that are of information, which is your resonating in certain resonances. And so we are all one. There's no difference between you and that level, and that's the level I engage to help you experience something different in your life. But it's not me fixing you, it's not me healing you, it's me making you available to potential and into a bigger spectrum of what you think life has become. Mm-hmm. It's up to you and your dynamics to say, oh, wow, I was looking for that opportunity, I was stuck and I couldn't get around it, and here we go, and here it's different. Or you and your consciousness and what you choose to experience in this lifetime is going to say, well, thanks. Let me try that out for a couple minutes. I like what I was doing, and go back to what you were. Mm-hmm. So, it's all variables. Nothing is right. Nothing is wrong. It just is. And life is a spectrum. And you and I are representing different places on that spectrum. All the same materials there.
Mm-hmm. When you think of energetic healing, it could be someone who's a hypnotherapist or someone who practices Reiki. Whatever it is a person out there listening decides they want to see, to pursue to improve their life, and whether it's physical, emotional, whatever which way it is, they decide they want to go this direction. I've come to understand through many people that I've talked with that one of the most important things is for the healer to be clear. In other words, not to bring their baggage here and then start to try to heal somebody else, because they can actually possibly imprint that stuff in the person they're trying to change, right?
If that's your setup, that's your setup. Mm-hmm. And so it's however that works in your belief system. I think that is, the truth is that, in my truth, I'm not going to say your truth, because that's totally. So in my experience, what I noticed is that my clientele, I would engage differently than if they were seeing someone else. Each of us are going to notice something through our own personal filters and biases. And mm-hmm. people who are going to come to see me might not come to see the next guy, right? There's something about me that is unique, that is speaking to them. And I totally respect that, because there is what we're looking for are states of rapport, which is what that's that quantum entanglement that is so such a wonderful, mysterious thing about who we are. In that you feel in rapport, you feel simpatico with someone. It could be in your office, it could be your life. Hopefully it's the person you live with, but, that can be questionable at times. And so there's something there. So when I have someone come to see me, I don't think it's helpful when you get my biases. And so that's what's happening. You can work with all kinds of different people, and they all have their personal biases. It's to the degree that they can let go of those biases and allow to see you as you are. The challenge with any kind of knowledge, which is left brain information, and it's a system. Systems are designed by humans. They're created by somebody. Somebody's noticed something, mm-hmm. right? They have observed a pattern, and then, and they built systems design around it, and now all of a sudden you have Reiki, or you have quantum mechanics, or it's all somebody observing something.
And it's also funny too how people will merge different modalities to say, here's a new one that's even more improved.
Exactly. Well, and matrix energetics, to be honest with you, is totally about that. Richard Bartlett, who designed it, created it, took 40 different modalities and picked out what he felt came together well. And so that's why it's such a really interesting place, and it's about consciousness technologies, is that we're taking these different paradigms and systems that have been noted and going, okay, well, let's throw that in. When that's appropriate, let's use that. When that's appropriate, use that. And most of us, as practitioners, and not of just ME, but of anything, is that they've got a lot of different trainings and modalities that they're learning, because they see how for them they merge and how well they can work together. And we like to go to people that have a broad background, so we can go, oh, okay, that part I really get. This part not so much, but this part I really liked. I resonated to, right? And it just depends upon how you want to engage information. But the truth is, some of us are probably better at, in our own personal stuff, to be clear and hopefully be in a neutral place. But if I go to a doctor about something who's a specialist in something, I want them to know about that because I'm engaging in that belief system. And if I'm not engaging in that belief system, then it's really not helpful. Or if I'm engaging in that belief system and that belief system is full of limitations and definitions, et cetera, as part of that, how do I fit into it? And then I'm busy trying to fit into that model when it might not be the right model for me. So there's lots of different ways that we do that. And, I got to be honest, clients bring a lot of bias.
It really takes a lot of work for you to be able to see that in yourself, too, and decide, does this continue to serve me well, or maybe I might think about dropping this off, for instance.
Well, the truth is, and for me, and what I've noticed, is that there's always, all roads lead to Rome, right? There's lots of different ways to get to Rome, and you choose. We have choice. You can try something, and you see how it goes, and you can use different practitioners in that discipline, and you may have all different kinds of experiences with that person. ME is great because it's something that either can be an operating system, if you're going to think linear, or it can be just limited to being a program. And we like to think that it's more of an operating system and that all the different trainings and modalities that people have are really the programs that are in it. It will enhance whatever you do. It will also stand alone on its own, and it can do anything you want. So it's kind of like a very interactive system. And the challenge for people is, okay, well, I think I'm coming for this, and then you find out, oh, my gosh, it wasn't about that at all. And that's what's fun for me.
I was just thinking, Janet, that, as you worked in film, it sounds like, and on stage and so forth and so on, about a year ago, I believe it was, I had a really wonderful conversation with actress Dee Wallace.
Oh, yeah.
Most people remember her for movies like E.T. the Extraterrestrial and on and on. And she wrote a wonderful memoir about her life, in the movies and how she discovered, I guess, spirituality through that. And there was something in her book that I thought, if people really wanted to heal, this is one way they could really do it, and that is take acting classes.
Yeah.
Because she was revealing some stories in there, and I thought, wow, what a great place to go, because, if your coach is watching and he's very astute, and she worked with one that was known as the Zen acting coach. I can't remember what his name is now. You might know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, she might have worked with Strasberg or somebody.
Something like that. I can't remember who it was, but there was a part in there where this guy had to deal with a romantic scene with a woman, and of course this was just in the acting class, the workshop. And all of a sudden, he had sort of a hesitant or restraining about him, and this acting coach caught this. He was like, what was that all about? And all of a sudden, the guy, without even knowing anything about it, revealed this repressed memory that had to do with his mother. And it was caught there, but it came to the surface. And at that moment, it changed his whole perspective on the whole thing. And then, according to her story, he never returned to class again. But the fact was, I thought, acting, what a great way to really expose all of your vulnerabilities and biases and say, do I keep this or do I move on without it?
I recommend you come see me and we can do that one-on-one.
Yeah.
Some things play out well in a group, and we do groups all the time. But yeah, well, that's just getting in touch with your emotional work. That's getting in touch with your body work and your memories and stuff. Yeah, acting's great stuff. I used to help people audition and things like that. So it's you have to be willing to engage yourself, though. See, we have rule sets, Daniel, that keep us. I mean, that's a nice idea, right? But I could never do that. And then, so we can sit and chat, and I can go, oh, okay, well, this is the way this information is showing up. Now notice how you feel about it. Oh, well, maybe I could, But most of us are entrained in our limitations. And that's the challenge of being young, because I think the numbers were 50% of your decisions as an adult were based on your experience by age 5. 50%. So you're not even conscious of what was going on, too much of that. So 35% by age 8. All right, so 85% of the decisions you make as an adult are based on your experience before age 8. That's kind of really eye-opening. So you have only 15% from the age 8 to 21. So your teen years. Were those peak experiences for you? I would probably, it's sad when they are, like with the football players who can never play football, and they always remember, they're hanging out with their boys and their buddies, and, oh, yeah, it was great, that last year or whatever. They're stuck. They haven't progressed any farther. Their decisions are all still hanging around that event that early on in their life. And that's the truth of how we do this. So you have like 5%, I think it's 5% by after the age of 21. And when you come up against those numbers, it's not to come up against them. It's to understand that, wow, what did I learn before I was 5? That's telling me who I like and what I'm doing today in this moment. And you can play with that, because we're not going to say that those things didn't happen and those decisions didn't come about. We're going to say, well, what if it could be a little different? We're going to open up wiggle room and potential. There's the potential. Well, what if it could be different? And it's how you ask the open-ended questions and how we say that life can be different. It doesn't have to be what you think it is and how you're noticing it is, because that's all subject to interpretation. And we just engage who you think you are from a new place and go, well, isn't that fascinating? Look what you're doing. And you may be going, oh, my life is hell. And I'm going to go, wow, isn't that interesting? Would you like to do something different? How is it useful? Where's the value? Because in our pain, there is value. And I spent a lifetime trying to figure out what the hell that was. I'm going to be 60 next month, and boy, I'm here to tell you that you can change your story. And it's the key of how to do that. And that's what I offer people. And it's like, what are you noticing? How is it useful? Getting you the results that you want. And if it isn't, come see me, and we'll look at maybe a different way to approach it and engage it, because change happens in a moment. Energy, you can't even see those photons moving around there. You can't see those electrons. They're working so quickly. You can't see how, going to 0 to 100 in, 1.2 seconds or something. We can't even fathom that. That holds disbelief. And we're saying, that's okay. What if it's not what it is? What if it's not what you believe it is? What if it's different, and we're going to just help you just be different with your information, and then you just notice something different happens. Most of it doesn't run through a right brain processor, which is a parallel processor, so you can't articulate because left brain is more control of the verbal. So you just know something's different, and then we just get to notice. You get to observe over time. And you get to observe. So it can be something physical. It can be something emotional. It can be something. It could be something that's, let me see, physical, mental, emotional. Psychological. That's those fears and phobias. Those are the realms of experience information. Those are all the different ways we engage. And so through one of those filters, often more than one of those filters are in operation about it. Mm-hmm. And so we play with that. We use the word play. We are going back to that childlike state where it was anything. You could have a dream. You could check the stars out. You could have your imagination. For us, that's the power. That is the place because right brain connects to heart. So it directly goes into that field. We're accessing that for you. And, we all know disease in life can be very serious. And we're not saying it isn't. We're just going to engage it in a different way and say, well, in consciousness, from that viewpoint, what is it you're getting out of it? What if it could be different? Sometimes we know our stories and what we do, and we know we have awareness, but we don't act on it. And that's where it isn't wisdom. We want to act on our wisdom. So, a lot of times, if I stick my finger in the socket, I'm going to get hurt. Well, there I go, sticking my finger in the socket. And you're never engaged it as wisdom, it's just awareness. And that's not enough. It's where we get it in action. And so that's what I help people do, and I hope people will follow through and see. And interesting.
Mm-hmm. Janet, I was wondering if over the years that you have been practicing your empathic energetic art, would that be an appropriate way to say that?
Sure, I love it.
Okay. Well, we'll kind of get people to understand what empathic means here in a minute, but have you found maybe a common story or a common thread that tied a majority of people that you have worked with together?
Yeah, and the common thread is that we're find life challenging.
But life should be a struggle. It should be hard.
There are there are those core belief systems that society and civilization hold. The world is a threatening place. It has to hold it that way because that's the way we got programmed into this, right? I mean, I think, because you have the sympathetic, parasympathetic response system going there. Am I safe? Life goes on if I'm safe. Doesn't say about how I'm safe or the quality of safety or what that life is like, but for inherent in life is tension, and that's okay, there's energy moving there. Our challenge is we have too much tension and stress, or we have less tension, and that's rest and relaxation. But there's tension in everything that's living, because that's the dynamic of it. Energy is flowing. So we have to watch our language. I think what's common to all of us is that our language is poor. We don't, because we forget that most language is built around when you have a word and a sound, it's including the duality and the polarity of that word. Okay, heart, for instance. Heart has several meanings. We have a physical heart, we have our emotional heart, and then we have core essence, and that's states that we're engaged in. Heart space, unified field of consciousness. So when I use the word heart, you might be thinking, oh, my wounded, emotional, I don't want to go there. Or you might be going, oh yeah, I got one of those. It's almost in the center of my chest, and I think I know where that is. Or someone else will hear, oh, you're talking about what's the essence of this, right? So our language, we can get very confused about language. We all learn it through our own personal environments of home or lack of home. You know, if you're growing up without parents, and there's language around you. So you encode your information to fit that language. Later on, you're out of that environment, you hear that language, and you're back immediately to how you learned it, not realizing that people are referencing it in a different way. Mm-hmm. So I think what's common to all of us is that we have control mechanisms that are not flow-oriented. An ego, in essence, okay, when you look up the dictionary definition of ego, it means sense of self. Most of us, I think we're going to say egotism.
Mm-hmm. Which is, or a sense of pride, for instance.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So
such as the football player you described earlier.
Yes. So, you know, so the languaging, you're already in a belief system and you're thinking something which is not at all what I'm talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the same word, but we have different. So I think confusion is really common with people. I think states of being like anxiety. I think most people are in a state of anxiety someplace that they've learned to deal with or cover up, or it's rippling underneath there. I think there's lots of probably common things that are not coming to mind right now, but it's how we deal with how we find ourselves. We are always in relationship, and I think that may be one challenge for us as a country, for instance. The United States was formed with people coming from different places to a united experience, and we're going to say we're going to let go of that influence, and here it's different. Well, of course, nobody did let go of wherever they were. They, you know, you have your ethnic groups, and you know, go to New York. You have 155 different recognized ethnic groups. Oh my gosh, and they're all trying to find common ground.
And even though we were trying to flee taxation, we managed to have taxation here that's probably even worse than what we ran from.
Well, you know, the politics aside, it's these people coming together trying to make decisions, but they're coming from a place of fear. Mm-hmm. They're coming from a place of lack. They're coming from a place of there's not enough, because the belief system that's underlying all that is that the world is not a friendly place to be in. And so we need to gather, and family was the first place. That was the first gathering in the sense we had, and then you had a little bit bigger sense of family. Everybody else, and then clan, and all of a sudden you get into clan, and then you get into clans grouping, and that's community starts forming. And I just look at everything back to those bases of how humans experience life, right? And those programs are still running. Those identities are there because people can't recognize each other except as separate. And we have a sense that we are separate and unique. And that's back to the thought about the United States, is we hold ourselves separate, and so then we can do this for you because we know better. And not that that's true or anything, but you just see how it plays out in different marketplaces. And so, and independence. Okay, you know, this country is built on independence from where we were, but we're all in this boat together, so there is no independence. So we are individuals having an interconnected experience. Those dynamics are playing out in so many different ways, and you can see them in the world, how people have created what they've created. I think those are the commonalities of.
Now, one of the things, too, that we hear about, and I'm sure that you share, and hopefully the people that you work with come to see this, and you actually said this earlier in the program, and I remember when I bring this up here that when I had this reality a few years back, I thought, you know, I understand and I get this now. You know, I mean, I really could embrace it, and that was this. It doesn't matter whether something is good that happened or something is bad. When you can come to a place that it's okay either way. And I thought, when I finally got that, I thought, wow, that's a place of real peace, because you're sort of saying, I kind of welcome the bad stuff because it turns into good anyway. How do you get people to come to see that perceiving a wound as a gift rather than as, boy, I'm a victim? Because we have a lot of victimization here in this country.
Totally. And that's one of those common things, right, is that we're powerless and other people dictate who we are and what I'm going to do and my potential, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what you have to understand is you have choice. You made a choice, maybe not from a conscious place or a knowing place, but as consciousness, you chose this embodiment to engage certain information. And if you're not in an attached place to that, then you can experience all kinds of different things. And that's our key. For me, we are the journey. This is the journey of enlightenment, not the journey to enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this unveiling, these layers of awareness that I hold as an individual in society, surrounded by others, understanding my commonality, which may look different, but what's the difference between me and the tree? There's not a lot. It's just the form it's taking. That tree, as we get more sophisticated in our technologies, we're understanding we can communicate with the tree. That the tree is communicating with us, and it maybe just doesn't really care, right? It doesn't have that kind of supposed development of mind power, but it may not be in a reality where it's important. It just knows that it does its seasonal thing and has different experiences. So we're all kind of that way to me. I just go back. So your question is how to get someone to change. You have to be willing to change. You have to feel comfortable with it. You have to be able to find that place in yourself that says, enough of this already.
Mm-hmm.
And there are no victims. In this, when you do consciousness work, it's not about who did what. It's just, oh, look at that. Isn't that interesting? Because of that, you're doing this. And because you're doing this, you're doing that. And it's about being neutral. It's about being non-attached. And those, the skill of the martial artist, what is it that keeps him powerful, right, is he understands how to use energy and how to dance with it. Ageless, timeless, there's all kinds of things that come in. There's 6 different plays in there, and those aren't present. But it's how you engage information. How do you want to be? Do you want to be in an adversarial position with it? Do you want to feel less? Do you have issues of worthiness that come into play? I mean, you can experience information however you want.
Do you have to be right?
No.
There's a big one.
Yeah, right. There you go. Right. I think that's what I've come to learn. I understood that I needed to be right, and so I don't need to be right. I just moved into, I'm usually right. Okay, and I realized this last week, thank you for mentioning this, that came out of a need to be right. Well, why did I need to be right? Oh, well, I made a discernment because I would be safe if I was right because of my situation. So I've created a state that I'm right. Pretty much I'm usually right. Mm-hmm. And so I don't even need to be right. I just am right. I've moved off at that point. So it's like, okay, well, I needed to feel safe. And what was going on there? Okay. And then all that information revealed itself. So I've come to understand, and that was just the last part of that over the years, is that I can't know it all. Mm. How can I be okay if I can't know it all? Then let me be like the Fool.
Right.
The Fool in the Tarot deck, who's the most powerful card. Innocent, that just has a bag of tools and is the animal companion and goes off adventuring in the world.
There you go.
And I think that's what I want people to get, is the innocence is never lost. It's just gaining experience.
Now, Janet, I know that we got about 1 minute left here, so I was going to say now I understand that, distance really doesn't matter, that you're able to work with people, whether they're over the phone or I don't know if you do Skype or any of that. Uh-huh. But where's a website people can find out more about you and your work?
They could check out www.janetandbeyond.com, and it's JanetAndBeyond.com, and they'll give you a pretty good. I also write weekly, Life and the Beyond, and they email me at Janet. I write weekly for Matrix Energetics students, play groups, and study groups that I hold here. And we explore what we're looking at life, and I share that with people from all over the world.
Very good.
And
well, Janet, thank you so much for being on the program today, as we're just about out of time here. And it was very enjoyable to talk with you about this and share with our listeners about the ability to move from where you are to where you want to be. It's not as hard as you think.
Exactly. Thank you, Daniel. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you again. We also encourage your listeners out there, visit us at Beyond50Radio.com. We'll have more about energetic matrix and how you can find out how to get involved and move forward with from where you are to where you want to be. We want to thank you for taking the time to tune in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis, and remember, wherever you are is where you should be. Have a great day.